Tranquility viewers, the Colonel speaking to you live from the Grange, British Imperial YouTube Broadcasting. Now we've got a Filmophone record here for children. Are you sitting comfortably? Then I'll begin. It's number 257, The Adventures of General Tiny, the One-Eyed Cat. Spoken by Uncle Roy. Parts 1 and 2 I'll turn over if I can, halfway through. Here we go.
Hello children, Uncle Roy speaking. And now for the last adventure of General Tiny. This one is called The One-Eyed Cat. Old Dr. Fritz, who lived next door to Aunt Alice, had a huge and ferocious tomcat named Tiger. It had only one bright green eye, because it had lost the other in one of its many fights. Its eye was not the only thing that was missing. It had also lost bits of its ears and a part of its tail. Tiger used to spend most of his time prowling about the doctor's roof looking for someone to fight. And on the day when Billy and his friends brought the mermaids ashore, Tiger was on the watch. From the tiles, he saw the glittering scales of the mermaids' tails, and his mouth watered. Never, he thought, had he seen so many fish together at the same time. So he hurried off to tell his other cat friends the good news. It was lucky that just at this time, the Daisy Patrol had arrived from Africa. They hurried down to the beach with a number of stretchers on which they carried the mermaids up to Aunt Alice's garden. Now, mermaids' tails can only peel off when they have lain for 24 hours in the sun, so they laid them out on Aunt Alice's beautiful lawn. General Tiny saw to it that the princess had the best place on a soft bank of moss, and there he sat by her side, telling her all the great adventures that he had had in the past. You would naturally have thought that they would be safe here, but they weren't. For while Billy and the others were carrying up the Spanish gold from the beach, a great swarm of ferocious cats, led by Tiger, suddenly leapt over the garden wall. Imagine the terror of the poor defenseless mermaids when this hungry horde descended upon them. Luckily, at this moment, Pansy entered the garden. Seeing what was happening, she blew her whistle loudly, and the Daisy Patrol came rushing to her aid. "Quick!" cried Pansy. "Some of you beat the cats off, while others cover the poor mermaids with the stretchers, so that the cats can't bite them." While they were doing this, General Tiny drew his sword and bravely fought 3 cats who were trying to get at the princess. He was a splendid fighter, and inch by inch he was beating them back, little knowing that Tiger was cunningly slinking round behind his back through the bushes. The princess screamed with fright, and the general swung round just in time to see Tiger disappearing over the garden wall with the princess in his mouth. The general was in despair, for he was so small that he couldn't hope to climb the garden wall. Suddenly, who should come swooping down from the blue sky but Mr. and Mrs. Stork.
And we'll turn over there, viewers. There you go. I'll just try and turn this Filmophone over. Not an easy thing to do. Put some wax on it because there are... Right, and here we go with part 2. Are you sitting comfortably? Oh dear.
"Help! Help!" cried the general. "The cat's carrying off my princess." Quick as lightning, Mrs. Stork picked up the general in her beak and placed him on her husband's back. And while he bore the brave little man up to the doctor's roof, to which Tiger had just carried the princess, she flew off down to the beach to warn Billy and the others. Tiger was just about to make a meal off the princess when General Tiny, sword in hand, jumped down off Mr. Stork's back and attacked him so vigorously that he let go of his prey. But the poor little princess was almost in as great danger as before, for she found herself slipping down the steep roof, and she would have been dashed to pieces on the terrace below if Mr. Stork hadn't again come to her aid. Catching her neatly and gently in his beak, he flew down to the garden and carried her back in safety. By this time, Billy and his friends had put the other cats to flight. Suddenly, they heard cries coming from the doctor's roof, and looking up, they saw General Tiny still in mortal combat with Tiger. He was steadily driving his enemy back when his foot slipped on a broken tile and he fell. With a growl of triumph, the ferocious cat leapt on him, and it looked as if all was over with the general. With great presence of mind, Billy whipped his catapult out of his pocket and fired a well-aimed pebble right into Tiger's one eye. With a howl of rage, Tiger let go of the general, who leapt to his feet and with one sweep of his sword severed the cat's head from his body. Before long, the general was back on the lawn, where Pansy bound up his wounds, which fortunately were not serious. Billy, Harry, General Tiny and Sambo watched the mermaids all night, and when Pansy and the Daisy Patrol came to relieve them next morning, they found that the mermaids had shed their tails and were dancing about happily on the lawn on their newly grown legs. "I've got some wonderful news for you," said Pansy. "Billy's aunt wants us all to stay with her forever and ever. She has such heaps of money now that she's going to build a lovely little fort for the General, an African mud hut for Sambo, a scout's camp in the pine trees for Billy and Harry, and a great big army hut for my Daisy Patrol." "But what about us?" asked Mr. Stork, looking rather hurt. "Oh, she hasn't forgotten you," said Pansy. "She's having the highest chimney in the world built for you and Mrs. Stork in the rose garden." "And I've got some wonderful news for you too," cried General Tiny, puffing out his chest. "Billy's aunt will have to make my fortress big enough for two. For this morning, when the morning dew was still upon the grass, my darling little princess promised to be my wife." Everyone danced round joyfully and congratulated the happy couple, and Aunt Alice brought out the biggest roly-poly pudding she had ever made to celebrate the occasion.
Well, there we are, viewers. I was hoping we might avoid political incorrectness, but we didn't. Never mind. Hope you enjoyed it. Thank you and goodbye.